and welcome to our Hustle and Know entrepreneurial experience. We are an entrepreneur book club moving into the vlog podcast world. My name is Julie. I'm your host this evening. And joining us, we have Joseph, co-owner of Financial Planning HQ, and Shawn, Townley, entrepreneur, consultant, speaker, and geek. Today, we are going to discuss the book that we previously read, which is Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson. So, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, guys. In one word or sentence, give me your synopsis of the book. If you were the author, what main point do you want the reader to take away from this book? Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I'll go. I think the one word that describes this book for me is minimalism. This book does not get fancy at all about what you should be doing. In fact, they even made a comment that this was a 50,000-page book, that they made 20-something thousand pages because they just cut to the chase. Minimalism, that's my one word for this book.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. Instead of one word, I actually think two words sum it up. For me, it's mainly about efficiency and momentum. Throughout the entire book, that to me is the main theme. He goes on to say, like, why grow when you're not ready? You know, that has to do with being efficient. Don't be a 50-employee company if you only need 4. You know, there's no point. And then he also goes into, like, momentum. Like, for example, he says, make decisions quickly, because if you're going to wait and make that decision tomorrow, it's probably going to be the same decision that you would have had today. So you might as well make it. Plus, as you go on, you can easily change that decision if necessary, if you cross that road. So momentum fuels speed, and it just makes everything better, and your company runs smoothly. So that's what I think the main point is about. What about you, Joseph?
I would say my one word is adapt. It's kind of, you have an advantage when you're a small business or an entrepreneur, which he said he hates that word, entrepreneur. I remember that part. And the advantage is that you're not a huge company with lots of red tape. So you can keep things simple. You don't have to, you can make changes on the fly. And that was something that I really resonated with, is since you're a small business, take advantage of all the things that go along with being a small business and adapt with the times instead of doing things like they did like 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, it talks a lot about like the old dogma of how business should be done and how you can update that for the world we're living in now. I enjoyed that part.
Agreed. Okay, so then tell us what you liked best about the book and then what you disliked about the book. Joseph, you want to go first this time?
Yeah. What I like best about the book, I think it's timeliness. I think it's perfect timing to be reading this book during this age that we're in currently, because a lot of old business practices are now being questioned. I've heard people say that they were told they can never work from home, they couldn't work remotely, and now suddenly it's like, oh, now you can work from home because that's the only way you can work. So this has brought a lot of like old beliefs that people just kind of went along with because it's the way it was always done. And now companies, small businesses of all types are having to update and get into the modern world. So I think the timeliness, I think it's perfect timing to read a book like this and really question a lot of the old way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Definitely true. What did you dislike about the book?
I'm a financial planner, so I didn't like what he said you shouldn't have a business plan. I think there's a right way to do a business plan and a wrong way, and I think the wrong way would be the way he was describing, very rigid, where you can adapt and make changes. But you could make a plan where, you know, you have like a guideline of where to go. Sort of like it guides you, but it's not like, oh, you have to do it exactly like this. That allows you to be flexible. I think that's possible. There's some nuance there where you could have a plan that allows you to be flexible at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. It's funny that you say that you like disliked that, because at first I disliked that as well, because I was like, well, you know, that's what I went to college for, business entrepreneurship, and that's basically all they teach you is like business plans, you know, plan. Yeah. And so, like, but I get what he was saying. He was saying planning is guessing. So he's like, make decisions right before you do something, not years or months in advance, which I can agree with as well. Don't keep a business plan and then just hoard it for 5 years. Like, that's not going to be useful because times are going to change, like situations are going to change, markets are going to change. So that plan's no longer going to be useful. So I both agree and disagree with that point. Agree, like, I still would like it to make a plan, but just don't just hoard information because that's not really useful as well. Yeah. So then, since I'm already talking, I'll go into that. So I liked that and disliked that. And then I also, like I was saying, the main point was about efficiency and momentum. That's another thing I liked when he says making the call is making progress. So you don't have to live with the decision forever. You can correct it later. And he says launch now. Like just like Gary Vee says, like, don't wait forever. Just go with it, test the market out, and then, you can always fix it later. Mm-hmm. So, and this like blew my mind when I read this book, and when this part, so I have to tell you guys. He goes and says, like, just launch now. So even if you're not 100% ready, because obviously he didn't really make a plan. For those who didn't read the book, the guys, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson, they are creators of Basecamp, the project management system. And they also created Highrise, which is a CRM system. But they said when they launched Basecamp, they didn't even have a way to, like, bill people yet. So, which blew my mind. They're like, okay, let's launch. And they bill people at the end of the month. So we have 30 days to figure out that process. And in the meantime, we'll spend the rest on more immediate things that we have to get taken care of. So I don't know if I would go that far. But, I admire their tenacity. So he basically goes on and says, like, if you had to start a business in 2 weeks, like, what would you cut out? You'd see that there's a lot of unnecessary stuff that you're planning that you don't need to. So I think that was his main point. And let's see, what I disliked about the book was he had this one point that he said, which was like, pick a fight. So, for example, you can create alliances by being friends with people who also hate your enemy. Like, be friends with people who hate your similar enemies. So, for example, he goes into Dunkin' Donuts is like the anti-Starbucks. So they're always like making commercials where they're mocking their sizes. And they even have a website that's like DunkinBeatsStarbucks.com or something like that. So, and you've seen like the PC and Mac commercials where they're always like, PC's lame, like Mac is where it's at. Or is it reversed? Oh my gosh, it might be reversed. Microsoft. They think Microsoft is better than whichever, it's irrelevant. The point is that they go into, like, picking a fight can be a marketing tactic that you can do. And I don't agree with, like, I'm not just going to start fights with other companies just because, but if it works for other companies, I mean, you're okay with it, I guess go ahead, but I disagree. What about you, Shawn? What do you like and dislike about the book?
I love just the brutal, just minimalist, don't grow for the sake of growing. Don't give customers features that they want. Find your own problem, solve your own problem, and then sell the product as a byproduct. And then get the byproduct and sell that too. Because these guys built software, then they wrote a couple of books, they were doing some blogs, put them together, now they have a book. So they just got all this stuff coming out, and they're all about, make it more efficient. We don't need to spend marketing dollars. Our people talk to each other. We only want to talk to a few different people. We don't want to talk to everybody. We don't have to be big. In fact, we don't want to be big. There's only like 5 of us, and we just kind of roll our thing, and we're happy just the way we are. By the way, stay away from other people's money, too. I mean, you always hear about growing and using other people's money. These guys are like, screw that. We only want to do what we want to do, and then no more. Like, we turn away customers now when they say, hey, it would be great to have this feature. Hey, it'd be great if you moved down the road. You can't use our product anymore. I mean, it was just very kind of in your face, fun. And one of the things I didn't like, it was so short. The book was short. And then, to turn around, I would have liked it to be arranged a little bit better because it did kind of feel like a really long blog post. I mean, you just kept going on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it didn't seem like there was a very good way for me to go to a particular section if I wanted to kind of read up on that. But the philosophy stayed pretty consistent the whole time. And it was like, hey, if you don't need it, forget failing. You ever hear about failing? Why fail? And by the way, don't even market yourself, because if you're going to fail, you better fail while you're small when nobody knows you, when it doesn't hurt. Because as soon as people start noticing you, then you're going to get conservative. It's just the way things happen. Don't do it. Don't get conservative. Stay small, stay nimble. Forget that behemoth over there. In fact, go pick a fight with them and see what happens there. You may even get some free publicity out of it.
Agree. Well, thank you for that insight, Shawn. I agree with you completely. A lot of good points in this book. So many. Like he said, it doesn't have like chapter 1, chapter 2 structure. It's just like each little section, it has like a different topic, and then it's like goes into description for like a minute long, or little paragraph, and then on to the next. So, okay, what is something that you guys learned from the book that you didn't know before, and how are you going to apply it to your regular day-to-day lives? Joseph, hot seat, go.
I mean, the part that really stuck with me, I think sometimes I do, is trying to put up like a business persona of being super professional and things like that. And it really resonated with me, the idea that you should be authentic in business, be yourself. When you make a mistake, just own up to it. He talked about a little bit about like fake apologies that these companies do, and they're like, we apologize for the inconvenience of this. And just being yourself, because no one can outcompete you if you're yourself. That gives you another competitive edge. And I think that's what the purpose of this book was to give a competitive edge to smaller businesses and entrepreneurs. And yeah, that authenticity, like in my own life, I've noticed that when I'm trying to be like, oh, I have to be perfect, then you end up making a bunch of mistakes because you're trying so hard not to. But when you're just like going with the flow, you're just being yourself, that things are a lot easier. And I could see also how it makes businesses more relatable and more human. And that's something that people want. They want simplicity. They don't want everything to be super complicated. And they want authenticity from their businesses. And I think nowadays people can see that. And that was the main thing I'm going to work on, is being more authentic in my life and also in my business.
Mm-hmm. It's like we were talking about the other day, Joseph, like when you were saying like be authentic. And one of the examples in the book was like, let's say something happens and like the system crashes for whatever reason, or your business isn't working on Basecamp. And instead of like the traditional message, oh, we're sorry for any inconvenience this may have caused you. It's like, you're just sounding like an automated person, like you're like a big company, and we're really not. We're just simple people, trying to make your customers happy. So why don't you make a back message that expresses who you really are, and not just like some corporate icy cold company. Like if you really care, why don't you make your back message, reflect that.
I was just on the phone and they were saying that, like, we apologize for making you wait. The wait time will be, and it's just like, you really don't care. You're a robot. If you really cared, it would be a person saying it at least. Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that.
Exactly, at least.
Yeah.
So my message would be, oh man, this must suck for you. I know somebody's yelling at somebody else on our side to get you back up and running. As opposed to saying, I'm sorry, we value you as a customer. Of course you value me as a customer. It's just so, why would you even bother telling me that? That just reminds me that you're too big to deal with me. Why don't you hire some more freaking people to answer the phone? If you care about my feelings.
Right. So then what is something you learned that you didn't know before, Shawn, and how are you going to apply it?
Keep moving the chains. If you get an idea, don't spend too much time on it. Don't plan it out too far. Just go ahead and get it out there, version 1.0, and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, you move on to the next thing. I like the idea of solving my own problems first and then turning around and sell it for that. And I think I could do that with my business, especially with consulting and stuff. If I find something that works for me, instead of trying to invent something for somebody else, say, look, this is what I've done to do it. And, this is what I'm offering. And if that works for you, great. And if not, maybe we're not a great fit. Maybe there's another guru out there that you can go work with and not get caught up, like you were saying, with stay authentic, stay yourself. It's going to be much easier to keep customers and run off customers if you stay yourself as opposed to being a facade of something else. I mean, because if you have to keep being that facade, you're going to come to work one day, or you're going to be doing your job one day. So you know what? Screw this. I don't enjoy this anymore. So why am I doing it? So I think the authenticity is right, and then not being afraid to not have all the customers and worry about growth all the time. Just take care of what you got, and the rest will take care of itself. Sounds like it has for these guys.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good point, because that's like a tricky thing, because you hear a lot of other entrepreneurs who are like, they're always saying yes just so that they can build up clients. So, for example, I remember I worked in college. I did a consulting project for this small business, and it was an embroidery business. And when they were telling us their story, that's what they said at the beginning is like, yeah, they had just got this embroidery machine. They didn't know 100% of how to do it yet. They took some classes, but they're like, we're going to start this business, right? And luckily they picked an area with a lot of traffic, like a popular shopping area. And so people would walk in and be like, hey, can you do this? Like, do you know how to do that? Like, and they're like, yeah, we know how to do it. And then later that night, they'd be on YouTube, like Googling, how do we do this? Like, just so that they can build up the customers. So, it's funny that he says, like, to be strategic. But I guess it also just depends on what kind of business you have and what you're able to afford to do. So.
Sure.
Okay. And for me, my biggest takeaway is I'm always trying to learn how to be more like productive and not a procrastinator, and just in general. So what I really liked and agreed with is he goes into saying basically interruption is the enemy of productivity. So, and workaholism, and lastly, sending people home at 5. So basically the concept he says is if you're going to give yourself like a deadline or like a timeline, you're forced to be more productive. So for example, people work in their 8 to 5 jobs, but if they know, I'll just stay late till like 6 or 7, they're going to be less productive throughout the day. They're going to be messing on their phones, on Instagram or whatever. And if you're saying, no, you have to leave at 5 regardless, they're going to be like, oh shit, now I have to get this done before the end of the day. They don't have a choice. And it makes you more productive, and it makes you be able to come up with more tools and scenarios of how to be more productive. So I really liked that. And so he was saying also interruption, is the enemy of productivity. So for his business, because they're all remote for Basecamp. He has people in all the way in different countries, different cities, different towns. And so he says you should have a couple blocks where you should be meeting maybe once a month or whichever, or maybe, schedule out an hour a day where you can talk. But in general, schedule blocks of time where you're just alone, like no interruptions, no coworkers like, hey, do you have this report or whatever? Like nothing. Just block it all out so that you can be the most efficient and productive you can. So it's like that inspires me. Like that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a block of time, Julie, work on X, Y, and Z for 2 hours, no TV, turn your phone off, whatever, and get it done. So that's what I'm going to do. And any last points that you guys like to add? There was so many good points in this book, like a lot of tools and tips. I highly recommended this book. And I also didn't think I would like it this much at the beginning. I was like, this is just going to be like another entrepreneur book that's giving you tips and how to start a business. But these were actually like breaking the status quo of what a typical entrepreneur, doesn't like that word, but small business should be ran.
Yeah. So, no. One of the best entrepreneur books I've read in quite a while. I mean, this is definitely, I can see where it may not be timeless like Richest Man in Babylon and stuff, and Think You Grow Rich, but very timely for this time. And I think the philosophy is, I can relate to it quite a bit, coming out of the corporate America kind of mentality, going more of the, everybody's kind of going to be, half the workforce, who knows after this crisis, maybe even more than half the workforce is going to be consultants and contractors. So it's just really a modern way to look at what's been going on. They've been doing this for over 10 years, so that's a little refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Oh wait, okay. I have to say this too because I love this point. He said, "Don't write it down." So, for example, if like you're getting all this feedback from customers, don't write it down at all. So, you know, like you would think, what? Why would I not write that down? So I don't want to forget. No, but he says don't, because the repeat, or what's the actual important stuff. For example, if like one person's like, you need to change the font on this page because it hurts my eyes. Obviously, don't write it down. If you're getting like thousands of requests saying that, then you're going to remember because you've heard it 10,000 times. So that's why, and that's the important stuff that you should listen, because the majority of your clients are having that concern. So love that point. Okay, check out the book. There's so many more tips in here that I didn't get to share with you today, but definitely check out, once again, Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson. So thank you so much for joining us today for the Hustle and Know Entrepreneurial Experience. You can find more about the authors in the description. And don't forget, hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.